Hello and welcome to Health and Wellness, your guide to the integrated personal and financial retirement journey for physicians. I'm your host, Michael Swartz, Certified Financial Planner and Master Certified Physician Development Coach. Welcome to this week's episode of the Health and Wellness Podcast. Today, I'm lucky enough to have Dr. Kyla Lee. She works in internal medicine and palliative care at Gundersen Health Systems here in La Crosse, Wisconsin. And Kyla, I know you do a lot more at Gundersen, so welcome to the podcast. And if you would, share a little bit more about all that you're involved in over there at Gundersen.
Thank you, Michael. I'm really excited to be here. And yeah, I have a really wonderful and rich role at Gundersen where I get to be a palliative care hospitalist and also internal medicine clinic. And then I run the third and fourth year medical student programs. So I get to do interactive education and hopefully build the next future doctors for Western Wisconsin here. And with that, I get to do both resident, med student, and fellow interactive teaching at our wonderful sim labs.
That's fantastic. And I know you have a reputation of being a go-getter. And especially here, on the Health and Wellness Podcast, we are all about doing some proactive work to get ready for retirement. And so my question for you is, what are some of the unique challenges in your role that you've experienced as you're preparing for retirement? And I do want to be clear here, you have no retirement date in sight. And so it's not like it's tomorrow, but as you're nearing the end of the arc of your career, what are some of the things that are top of mind as you're preparing for this transition?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think also I think being a physician, you're in the spot where need to be more reflective about life and death. I can tell you as a resident, I did my advanced care planning at age of 28.
Good
So
for you.
it seems like and being prepared makes a lot of sense to me. It really helps me relax and think about all the wonderful things I hope for retirement when it gets here, focusing on volunteerism and saving sea turtles. But you need to have the steps to get to those places. I've also, as a physician, from listening in clinic or in palliative care and hospice, as I've watched people and families head towards the end of life, not just retirement, I've seen, pretty hard situations for families when people aren't prepared. So I wanted to do two things with doing my retirement planning. One was to just, one is to make sure that I'm not creating burdens for other people when it's my turn to go. And two is that I'm not an expert in retirement and finance. I know that, and so getting the expert or, somebody who can help me make smarter decisions and shore things up and make sure that they know things like long-term insurance, things that I'm not an expert on, it was really helpful for me then to get much more relaxed about what those future years could look like and make some plans about what I hope to put my energy into as I make that transition along the way.
Well, yeah, you highlight a really good point there, Kyla. It's almost as if we've been trained, especially in the physician world, physicians have been trained to have a financial plan. But the challenge is physicians are also taught not to talk about money, at least with the patients. And then when you go into peer groups, it's probably a little bit of a different situation where, the physicians are always perceived to be wealthy and have all this great income. And so we really almost get boxed in to having open conversations about finances. And we still know we need a retirement plan for that. So you mentioned it very clearly that there's this complex nature of planning that starts with financial planning that most people are aware of. But then there's this personal planning where you said, creating that step down, closure for your career, and dreaming about the next generation. What are some thoughts that you have to create this meaningful closure for your career at the end of the arc?
Well, with financial planning, I can look at a lot of different things from, what do I hope to live like? What experiences do I want to have around the world? I also think, thinking about my nieces and nephews, family. I've also been very involved with mentoring and kind of raising children that are not my own, but I want them part of my financial planning. And so, it's just helped me be able to really layer that out. And I also think discuss things that, again, I'm not going to pretend that I am that great at finances. This is not my thing, right? And so that, for me to talk somebody about risk and benefits and even, what should even be in a long-term insurance plan, or what should I flip out to? So, together you and I made some pretty big changes and pretty important changes, and you also looked at things that I was doing and said, yeah, that's good. And so I think it was very reassuring and very affirming that the direction I go in, and even though retirement isn't, right on the horizon for me, it's just not even a worry for me right now. I'm just, I'm doing my thing knowing when I get there that we have a plan.
Well, what sense of freedom, what sense of freedom does that really provide for you then to focus back on the things that really fill your cup?
Yeah, it was really fun to have the conversation about what, what are some things that you really love to do? And I'm like, well, I know that I want to get back to Africa. I know I want to do volunteer work, and I know that scuba diving is going to play a big role until I turn 75, because even Jacques Cousteau had to hang up his fins then. But I think like making those plans, and you were like, yeah, you should do that. You've been working hard. And so we looked at like what am I gonna have to, live on? What kind of place will I live at? And then what am I gonna have to play with? And then still being able to do the things like set up scholarships or foundation things, and doing some of the legacy work that I hope to do in my life too.
Well, you mentioned that legacy piece, and that was really one of the driving forces between our relationship too, was having an estate plan, having some clarity on what happens, and you alluded to that, on the provider side as a clinician, you're in the hospice role, and you are bedside at some of these end of life conversations that without a plan, I guess could you shed a little light on maybe what some of the not so good situations are?
I've just seen family members be put in a position of, maybe live small things, not even being on the title of a car, or not being on bank accounts, or, or just not being in like families are in the courts for years. I've seen, things happen with plans that were made, but they weren't done well enough. And then, siblings have so much more. I really like, part of my planning is to be as helpful to the people left behind, that to not leave it a mess and to make it very simple for people. And like that was one of the main goals sitting down with you, and you wrapped it all up. We bundled it. It's estates, and we made it so that really I don't feel like I'm handing years of work to somebody in my passing.
Yeah, and we've seen it a lot from the financial perspective, right? Accounts are out there that surviving members of the family don't know about. And
Wow.
so even just a ledger of accounts, and then you've got beneficiaries named on them, and it's a document that then you can use to have a very matter of fact conversation with folks about here's what my goals are, here's everything in writing that you need to go off in black and white. But I want you to know it's been well thought through. It doesn't feel like an oversight. It doesn't feel like a half-baked meal. We've been intentional about it. And then you have that ability to have that conversation ahead of time to address some of these bigger issues.
Yeah, and Michael, I mean, the working with you has been incredible in that like you have a very good understanding of what's happening at Gundersen. You were able to link me back to the Gundersen Workday site and get everything cleaned up there. I think, when we change retirement plans or change things about our retirement plan, I can reach out to you. It's just always having that smarter, wiser financial person is really helps me. Just like take a deep breath, and I think it took me a while to come to somebody, but your counsel, your wisdom, and and I just really feel your integrity has made such a difference to my peace of mind for the future.
Well, I appreciate that, Kyla. And I would go one step further with that and say, beyond me, just for anybody, any physician listening out there, having a very clear understanding of the different relationship styles with financial professionals. And, there's suitability model where folks are really incentivized to sell insurance products, disability and life. And for physicians in their early career, it's a very valuable tool to have as a disability policy. And even in late career, but knowing that some people are only compensated by selling insurance products. So they're going to give you this idea that they're going to run a whole financial plan, but really the bottom line is driven by how much insurance they sell. And then there's the investment advisor who can manage investment accounts. And
Right.
then there's a comprehensive fee-based planner or fee-only planner in our case, where, by working with a fee-only certified financial planner, it removes as many conflicts of interest as possible. So if there's listeners out there, there's a network of fee-only advisors called the Fee-Only Network, where
Mm,
you can find a comprehensive planning fiduciary in your area. And I think that integrity piece that you talked about, Kyla, I mean, we're here in the La Crosse area. We work nationwide with physicians and medical professionals, but having someone, if you'd like to meet someone in person and local, finding someone that you can trust. And I know that's a big piece of everyone's conversation when they're
yeah,
looking for a
yeah,
financial
yeah.
planner. But just knowing the difference between that insurance or investment or fee only planner model, the fee only planner model is exploding in popularity because it's the fiduciary, the true, pure, comprehensive fiduciary planner. And I guess what I'm hearing is your experience with a fiduciary planner has been rewarding and phenomenal.
Yeah, I had gone in and out with different planners, of course, because if I had an advanced care plan at the age of 28, you can imagine I was trying to
That's
get
right.
things set up along the way, but it just never ended up being a relationship that I could trust. So then it becomes, I had my cousin running things, which is,
Yeah.
she did a good job, but I feel like I was getting to the age where and was lucky enough to meet you and your team, meeting the whole group, and just feeling like now I actually feel like we're teaming on getting me set, and I just feel great about it. So
That is awesome. And Kyla, I have to believe you're not alone. And so if you had any advice for the physician who has worked through their entire career managing their accumulation plan alone or with some help from family, I guess maybe I'll provide a little bit of the answer here, but retirement planning is quite a bit different than accumulation planning. Accumulation planning is carving out, saving, investing for growth. Retirement planning is an entirely different mathematical equation.
right.
And so, any advice for folks who haven't worked with a planner before, but are nearing retirement and starting to look at it and go, wow, this is a whole new math problem. It's not accumulation anymore. Now we're into distribution mode. What are your thoughts on that?
That is true, and it's a very different look at things. But you know, for sitting down, we looked at things together. We you know picked dates far from now to look at, and then kind of looked what that would look into my 90s. And so it's very reassuring, and it's very it gives you something to plan like with. And I know all physicians will have different amounts that they look at, right? And different
Yes.
amounts. And I'm primary care, and I'm looking at my mine, but but I can say that overall, like it was very reassuring for what I can do. And you would say, well, what do you want? And it's like, yeah, I think that's possible. And so I think you make better choices informed. And so I feel like
Yeah.
it's an informed look forward, right? It's an informed look
Yes.
forward, and you know what you're going to be kind of playing with, and what things are possible, and what things aren't.
Yeah.
But it's informed, and
And
that's
and
that's
yes.
really like essential, because whether it's through the beautiful bar graphs or just talking together, I really have that. I walked away with a sense of, like, I'm gonna be okay. And because in general, like with huge inflation jumps and different things like that, you can feel pretty uncertain. And in this case, I could feel like, okay, well, I know I can do this, and I know I want to do this, and it seems like those things will work.
Yeah, and the threats are everywhere, right? It's inflation, it's market cycles, it's
Yeah,
Social Security. Plenty of people have questions about that, when to take it, if it's going to be there for them.
right,
And so you
right.
start addressing some of these unknowns, and we convert those unknowns into either I know or we don't have control over it, and so we really can't compulsively wonder about that or worry about that. We'll plan for the
Well, there, you gave
contingencies.
me something to ask you next time we visit.
Perfect.
Excellent.
Perfect. And that's what conversations with the real relational planner with expertise in tax planning and investment planning can kind of transcend the transactional nature of a lot of client, financial planner, financial advisor relationships. And it's a catalyst for creating that freedom around finances to really focus in on the personal stuff. And so you've hit on this a few times, talking to you about what do you want, right? I wonder how many physicians have been asked, well, what would you like? And it's so easy to ask the patient that. It's so easy to ask our spouses that, our families that. But when are physicians creating the time to ask themselves that question?
Yeah. I mean, it's a good question. And I also think it's a great thing, for spouses to understand kind of what they're looking at, and just, what's most important to them. in that next chapter and to feel secure about that next chapter. But I can say that what's helped me the most is really have direct information on what that's going to be like.
Yeah, and I've seen that as an emerging theme here, and so for you to be able to share that, I'm sure there's plenty of listeners out there that are nodding their heads behind the screen, as you're listening to that, that sense of agency. I feel like, from the outside looking in, with several physicians that I work with, you seem to have retained one of the strongest senses of agency directing your professional trajectory. You have a very strong sense of creating boundaries and saying, this is how we're going to work things. For other physicians who maybe feel like the call is overwhelming or their role has expanded, they keep taking on one more thing and they've lost that sense of agency. I guess any advice or reflection on that, because you really do continue to drive your narrative, Kyla. And so I'm wondering, what have you done to do that?
Hmm. Well, I think it's something that I think I've really just followed my passion or found things that needed to happen, right? So we started the hospitalist team, then we in 2006 started the palliative team, and then we developed a new curriculum. So I think what you're seeing is actually uh real things that I'm passionate about changing at Gundersen and being part of. And so I think that's so I think I would hope that physicians are finding what we need great people doing great things everywhere. So find your calling, right? Find your calling.
Absolutely. And as we look at finding your calling, we've talked about the health and wellness coaching program. And at Gundersen, we're actually doing the Honoring Onward program for physicians over 55. And I know that's not something that you've joined us in or participated in yet.
Not yet.
But you did say finding your purpose. And that is one of the things that we work on is having physicians black and white write down and record their purpose. And that's
Yeah,
something that it's a generative process, but it requires some introspection. And so for someone who doesn't know that, there's coaching programs that are being developed
yeah.
to derive that, to pull that out, to distill it. And you said you've got that. That's something I think a lot of physicians lose along the way. It's so easy to sacrifice that throughout the arc of an intensive career.
Yeah, yeah. I think I think that coaching is huge. I think that coaching is so important. And while I haven't done your program, I am involved with coaching
Yes, yes.
nationally and educational coaching, and just have spent time thinking about this. Obviously got a master's in psychology before going to med school. So I think it's something that I look forward to being part of as I get closer. I think you couldn't do a better service to people than to have them become more intentional about where they're headed or what they want to do. And I think your questions help me too, because actually, even though I'm doing that, you're like, yeah, maybe you should do more scuba diving. I'm like, I'm going to do that.
Awesome. And what I mean, you see it as a coach, as you're coaching medical students, residents, et
Yep.
cetera. What could you please share with someone who's a little bit hesitant about starting the coaching process and being vulnerable and opening up and really exploring what matters to them? What's the feeling like when you start living aligned with that purpose?
I think, you know, that I wouldn't hesitate. I can understand that it's vulnerable, but I wouldn't hesitate because that person's intent is to just lift you and to work with you to find you. And I think that when we align, they tease me. They tease me at home because I come in every month when I get a new pair of medical students. I'm like, these are the most amazing people. And I think what it does is it just like opens you up to really feel, just grateful for what you do, and it lets you like really feel the impact. We all are trying to make whatever small dent we can with our lifetimes, and it lets you feel the impact and maybe even reflect on it. It's probably you've already given so much and done so much, and allows you to reflect on that, and then lets you to kind of think about, so with what's left, what's my new purpose.
Yeah, and the image that's coming to mind here is you're coaching with medical students and you're recognizing the value of coaching. Almost as if you're encouraging someone to hoist their sails, to throw it up for the first time and then be the wind. And
Yeah,
as any person who's ever been on a sailboat would know, you can take the boat basically into the wind. But as long as you have that energy and an ability to pull the right chords and move the sails the right way, there's two things that need to happen. You need to have the confidence to raise those sails and
mhm,
say, Here's what I know I'd like to do. And then someone behind you who's providing that wind and that energy that you may not even see it, but that
Yeah.
wind is blowing behind you, just encouraging you to go faster and more directly down the path that you choose. And now, as a coach, as someone who works with these medical students, how rewarding is it for you to see those sailboats take off the shore and head out to the big blue ocean of opportunity?
No, I think it's amazing. I mean, like when I think of what my whole purpose is right now is, in the fun words of Ted Lasso and everything that the med students love about him, I want to be the belief. I
Yeah.
want to be the belief, right? And so, yeah, I've reached the age that I am teasingly called wisdom on the hallway. But I think so that was a little hard. But I mean, I'm just saying, so that your role is an important one of maturing and of counseling and of supporting and of there are many hard moments in medicine, and so some walking through, right? Like the nobody's going to have a bad day without somebody to walk through it with them, and
Yeah.
that's a good thing. And so yeah, I think that that's the richness of being able to be the coach.
A- Absolutely. And when you look ahead or you look at these relationships that develop over time, I do want to point one thing out too. I'm sure you get plenty of thank you notes. I'm sure you deserve more. But have you seen it where 3, 5, 10 years down the line, these seeds that you've planted bear fruit? And how rewarding is that longer cycle?
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, like I can't even say enough about that. That it's amazing to me. I was a middle school teacher in Vermont before I went to medical school, and one of my students has made it, and it was a tough rural school, really tough, and some of them had some pretty tough lives, but one of them has made it to nurse practitioner and is still keeping in touch with me, and I just had a fun little text message. One of the residents is interviewing and was like, "Oh, in my interview, I met somebody who was in your class in 2012 and they handed me your EKG sheet and we talked." And it's like, so I know that like maybe I've helped somebody just be that much more secure about reading EKGs or be more confident as a doctor or be just, hopefully a little more, happy in the world knowing that they can do what they do, but also know that, I just was hoping to bring them along. Like I call myself the Sherpa of their internal medicine clerkship, right? It's the Himalaya mountain to learn all this stuff, but I'm going to be your Sherpa.
And how valuable is that? We differentiate between like mentor or advisor or coach. And those coaches are be able to, walk with someone, right? We're not,
Yes.
hey, I'm up in front of you and to get here, here's what all the things you need to do. It's nope, I'm going to come and meet you right where you're at. We're going to go to the base camp. And then
Yep.
I've traveled this mountain 1,000 times and it's going to feel like second nature. But along the way, I'm going to provide you some observations
Yep. And
and,
I
and
need you to
encouragement.
interact with me so that we can find your potholes so we can fix
Yeah.
it together, right? Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. It's
So
a,
that
it's it's a great position. It's a great honor to just walk with somebody and watch them, watch the light bulb come on and watch them create their own meaning.
So for the people who are considering becoming a coachee and enrolling in coaching and working with a coach, this is what you're preventing the coaches from feeling if you choose not to move forward. So if you're not going to do it for yourself, do it for them, and then they can help you do it for yourself. I see you just beaming, Kyla. This is the fun energy that you bring, and I'm so grateful that you've taken the time to be on this podcast because you're glowing. I mean, the energy is just radiating out of you. So even for the listeners, I'm sure you can sense the sense of excitement that coaches feel when they help people, like you mentioned, identify the potholes, the obstacles, and opportunities, and help foster the growth towards the opportunities and help you avoid the potholes. There's no need to get injured any more than you need to.
Right, right. Yeah. And, it's also good to have somebody when you do get a little injured, because life does that, to walk with. So it's just that it's a real fostering it together as you move ahead.
Yeah, and the last piece, Kyle, I think I have a really specific dichotomy here to explore with you. And you mentioned when you get hurt along the way, it's obviously not part of the plan. But
Right.
how do you balance, and how have you seen others balance rigidity versus malleability, and flexibility and adaptability versus consistency?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is tough because you're in within a system, right? And so sometimes when it hasn't happened, I'll just add the word yet. Well, we don't have this, and I put in yet. And then, I don't know, then there's grants. And then I think like So there's either, and then also like spending time with the leadership to find out what needs to be different. Okay, well, this isn't where we're placing our energy, but I still believe in this kind of cancer screening or the new innovations we could bring. Let's talk again, and maybe this doesn't happen at this moment yet. And I think just kind of figuring out, what the barriers are, and maybe, what needs to shift in my thinking to make it something that is great for this institution.
Yeah, and I love that you bring up changing in my thinking and changing in the environment. And so we talk a lot about reconciling the ego with environment. And so there's certain expectations that we have, things go a certain way. We've got our plan. When
Yeah.
things don't go to plan, do we have contingencies built in? Because those contingencies add to a level of confidence to take the first steps. How many people aren't just taking that first step and then exploring it and recognizing that it hasn't happened yet? And it's kind of this constant negotiation between what we're trying to get to and what the environment will allow us to do.
Yeah, and I also feel like, and then, sometimes you're really lucky and things align and you bump into the right person, and then you foster it like, oh, well, if this isn't going to happen in internal medicine, can this happen through this, or can this happen through, or if this isn't going to happen in oncology area, maybe we can bring it to internal medicine, and just always trying to figure out like where's the best fit, and I'm just always trying to use that word yet so that I can remain hopeful and find ways around it.
Yeah, remain hopeful, stay open to the opportunity. And even if it doesn't go according to plan, we can reach enough headwinds that we choose to go a different direction or just encounter some obstacles that require some rerouting. And so it's constantly just
There's
negotiating.
cycles. There's cycles in life. There's cycles in medicine. So I found, often the roadblock 3 years later becomes the, hey, why aren't we doing this? And you're like, oh, good, yeah, let's do that.
And as it pertains to that transition into retirement too, I think the one thing that most folks don't anticipate as much as they think they should, and we've seen this with studies, before and after retirement, is really the psychological and social losses that occur at the end of a
Yes.
career. And so you talk a lot about, well, if it can't happen in this department, let's move it over here. You've got all that playground to work with in a health system. How are you rebuilding those structures outside of your role as a physician at Gundersen Health System?
Yeah, I think like when you talk about, yeah, it's going to be a big change for me. Honestly, it's going to be a big change because you know, um, just like they say, football is life. For me, doctoring is life. It
Yeah.
really, and so, most of my days are spent with my 20 to 30-year-old colleagues and hearing about their families, and my 20-year-old med students and finding out the latest apps and things like that. So I know it's going to be a bigger change, but I also think like you slowly prepare. I've tried to learn pickleball, enjoying biking, and I think starting to volunteer at some community hospices and ideas and things like that, just because I don't think my wish to be active and generative will change, just
Yeah.
be at a different in a different forum.
Yeah, and I think, to piggyback off that thought, it does not have to be the retirement cliff, right? We don't pick a retirement date, work full speed, hit that date, and then things shift 180 or even 360 degrees overnight. What it can be is almost this market transition. And so you start picking up these hobbies, you start finding different roles outside of the healthcare system that give you that confidence to say, okay, I can rebuild the exact same sense of validation and purpose that I have in my role as being a physician. And to be clear, you can continue being a physician 65, 70, 72, 75. And I don't
Yeah.
want to give away your retirement plans, but it's no time soon.
No, no. But
And that's
I think like you watch people go in and be anatomy mentors, at the university, or, I mean, I think there's a lot of ways that I can retain teaching, even it's, like looking at positions like how can I help? I've already volunteered within, Logan High School. I just think that there's different ways that I think we work hard to get all this knowledge and experience, and there's a whole bunch of people out there that just can't wait to become what I've been allowed to be. And if I can make that journey possible forward. So I think that I will find plenty of things to keep building.
Yeah, and you have chosen to stay a physician for an extended period of time, but it's been a conscious choice. And I think that's really one more thing I want to highlight is so many physicians retain their role as a physician because it's what they know. They just stay a clinician because they don't know anything else, and so it's comfortable and familiar. We looked at it and said, Kyla, we could take this away if we wanted to. What would your life look like? And now let's rebuild it with a blank slate here. And things became conscious choices
Yeah.
as we were building them back in. So it's not to say there's a right or wrong answer. We just
Yeah.
want to make those conscious choices.
Yeah. Yeah, right. I mean, informed and conscious, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And so coupling that with, a financial retirement plan and your personal retirement plan that frankly should just be called your personal keep working plan. Because you
Right.
do. You take so much energy out of it. That's where your passion lies, and that's values aligned for you. And so I do. I want to celebrate, your decisions, your planning that you've done, because this is really what success looks like, is having that personal retirement plan and financial retirement plan that leads you to this positive trajectory into a crescendo at the end of your career. And you're loving it.
Yeah, it's great. And I just think, there are so many physicians with so many different skills and talents. Some are music, singing, playing guitar, doing they come, and then a lot of your life is required when you're going through med school and residency and the first years of building your practice. And then you get into a different spot where you can start reflecting on what of this is most important, what do I want to add in, because I think that I didn't do that as well along the way. It really was a passion to be the best primary care physician that I could think and of being people's medical home if I could. But I think, then just trying to rebalance and remember, oh yeah, you used to play a lot of tennis. And what happened to guitar? And and you love scuba diving. And I know you want to save sea turtles. So now let's talk to Michael about how we can get some of this going.
Well,
Yeah.
that's so awesome because we really are. We're going up into the attic, into the archives of our passion, of our soul, because so many sacrifices were made along the career path. And I guess it's a bit of dusting off, and sometimes it requires a bit of mining. And that's where, coaching and conversation is a safe space to explore those things. And when you light up about, the music or you light up about the sea turtles, it shows that spark just needs a little bit of tinder and a
Yeah.
little bit of conversational tinder and a little bit of breeze, and it's going to pick up right where it left off. And it's amazing to see that not only on your face, but I'm sure for you then working with others too, to really
Yeah.
light that fire.
And well, I mean, thank you for being the wind. Thank you for being
You're very welcome.
because my smiles and my energy are a reaction to our conversation. And thank you for being the wind and creating that safe and knowledgeable about what's happening next. And if I have questions and hit things along the way, you're walking with me along that.
Absolutely. And what better gift to give someone than to be that Sherpa, to be that guide along a journey that can seem daunting at times, but just to have that friendly reminder, we're taking one step at a time, and I promise you we're heading in the right direction based on what you've told me is your goal for this hike, for this climb.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Love it.
Wonderful. Well, Kyla, I appreciate you for being on the Health and Wellness podcast. Any final notes here as we close out? Any recommendations for your fellow physicians in late career or in early
Yeah, I can
retirement?
say that it's been excellent being able to work with you and your team, just getting things worked out, knowing that I'm not leaving things I'm not even not leaving things a mess. I'm leaving things very easy for my family to take care of if anything happens that I'm not expecting. And, you know, and when I need to expect it, it'll be all taken care of. And that feels great. I also really have appreciated thinking about, the coaching and just kind of working on what next steps I want and the ideas of what will I be able to do and just being able to realistically plan for that because I think that's how you get your own personal power. So I would really recommend taking time to meet with Michael and his team and also consider the coaching if you're getting close to that last 5 years.
Awesome. And if people are out there looking for coaches, you can go to healthwellness.com and you'll find coaches who help with this retirement transition, not just me, but other physicians who have transitioned into retirement as well, those who have walked that path. And I think that's the beauty of it here, Kyla, is anyone who is at any point on this journey is out there more than willing to help others because I think that's really what drives a lot of physicians to get into medicine in the first place, is that heart and that passion for serving and helping others with a strong intellectual ability and a compassionate heart.
Yeah. And to have somebody who's walked that walk, but you know that they have that compassionate physician heart of wanting to help others, walk that journey with you is got to be helpful. Got to be helpful.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Kyla. Appreciate your time today,
Thank you.
and take care.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Health and Wellness Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Michael Swartz, Certified Financial Planner and Master Certified Physician Development Coach. If you're looking for additional resources for integrated physician retirement planning, please visit healthandwellness.com. We'll see you in the next episode.